In one of the forgotten corners of the world, amidst dense, roadless, and unmapped forests, lies a city that is neither mentioned in geographical records nor recognized by any nation. This city's appearance differs little from ancient cities. Stone houses, paved streets, windows covered with thick curtains. But what distinguishes it and makes it a curse in the eyes of those who have heard of it is that its inhabitants only live 1 hour a day. 23 hours of deep sleep interspersed with 1 hour of wakefulness. And the interesting thing, everyone wakes up at the same minute. They move together, talk a little, quickly buy their necessities, and then each one of them returns to their bed as if nothing is worth staying awake for. It is unknown when this phenomenon began, nor why, but they call it blessing. As for us, we will begin our story when a strange man entered that city, not knowing that 1 hour of wakefulness could be enough to change his life forever. His name was Iyad al-Rama. He was a neuroscientist and human behavioral scientist. He had spent half his life in European research centers, tracking rare sleep phenomena, analyzing the human brain as if searching for a hidden door in a maze of electrical cells. But he hadn't expected that his research would lead him to an anonymous letter that arrived in his academic email. It contained only one line: "If you are looking for eternal sleep, come to the city of the sleepers." The place was mentioned in the letter in geographic coordinates unknown to satellites. Coordinates leading to the middle of an isolated forest in Eastern Europe, where there are no signs or paved roads. Despite all logic, Iyad packed his bag and left. It took him 2 days through the forest, during which he hired a local guide who refused to go any closer than a certain distance. "Beyond this, you enter the land of the sleepers, and I don't want to sleep forever," the guide said, handing him a transceiver in case he got lost. Iyad walked alone, and the first thing he noticed as he approached was the complete silence. No dogs barking, no children screaming, no music. Even the birds seemed to have left the sky above the city. Then he saw a wooden sign at the entrance to the city, written in an ancient language. "1 hour is enough for us. As for you, you are slaves to time." Curiosity drove him inside. The streets were strangely clean, as if they hadn't been used for decades, even though the houses looked inhabited. He passed a window and saw behind the curtains a woman sleeping on a white bed, her face calm, devoid of any emotion. In another house, an old man was asleep on a wooden chair, as if sitting was part of the ritual. Dozens of people in various sleeping positions, as if the city had turned into a communal shrine. And suddenly, he heard the sound of bells ringing from somewhere far away. Precise, harmonious bells, as if they pulsed with the heart of the city. The clock struck 4 p.m., and all the doors opened at the same moment. The city, which had been a lifeless corpse, was transformed into a hive of life. People came out of their homes, smiled quietly at one another, bought bread from a bakery that hadn't emitted smoke a moment earlier. Children ran. Women watered flowers. Men exchanged greetings. What was striking was that no one spoke much. Words were few. Everything was calculated. And at the end of the hour, exactly at 5 p.m., everything began to stop. People returned to their homes as if an invisible force was pushing them back in. I had remained in the middle of the street, the only visitor, contemplating a city collapsing into sleep once again. On the first night, he had decided not to sleep. He sat on the roof of an abandoned house, observing the dying city, wondering what's going on in their minds. Is this nature or a curse? And why, of all people in the world, was I invited here? Little did he know that the next hour would be the beginning of everything. Iyad couldn't sleep that night, not because he was afraid, but because his mind was more alert than ever. He sat on the roof of the abandoned house, recording his observations in a small leather notebook he had kept since his student years in Berlin. At exactly 4 o'clock, everyone came out as if there was a central device controlling their awakening. Their faces were calm, but their eyes were empty. It was as if they were physically waking up while their souls remained elsewhere. He closed the notebook and leaned his back against the stone chimney. The city below was silent. The only sound coming from it was the wind drifting between the windows, as if mourning something he didn't know. But Iyad noticed something he didn't expect. At 3:17 a.m., he saw a window suddenly open in a distant house. He kept staring into the distance, and suddenly he spotted a person standing behind the glass. He wasn't asleep. A man wearing a white shirt, his eyes open, but he wasn't moving. His body seemed frozen, while his gaze slowly wandered, like someone dreaming while awake. Then he slowly closed the window and disappeared. One of them doesn't sleep or dreams while standing, Iyad thought, and wrote in his notebook the appearance of the first anomaly, the possibility of different layers of consciousness. Before he could finish, he heard footsteps behind him on the roof. He turned immediately. It was a girl. She was in her early 20s, her hair braided, dressed simply in gray linen, her face pale but unusually alert. "You're the stranger," she said, her voice as calm as the dawn breeze. "I know you're not one of them, because you didn't sleep last night." Iyad stood in surprise. He hadn't expected anyone to see him. "And who are you?" "My name is Lama, and I also don't sleep like them." "How did you know I was awake?" "Everyone who doesn't sleep sees everyone else. That's how we know each other here." She approached him and sat on the edge, overlooking the city. "You came looking for an explanation, didn't you? You think this is a mass illness or a massive psychological experiment?" "Honestly, I don't know yet, but everything here is abnormal." "What is normal, Iyad? To stay awake for 16 hours every day, exhausted, running, tired, and then fall asleep without knowing why?" There was a moment of silence, and then he asked her, "What's going on here? Why is everyone sleeping, and why aren't you?" Lama looked up at the sky and said, "Here, we don't dream when we sleep. We dream when we wake up." The next day, the city came back to life at 4 p.m. But Iyad decided not just to monitor. He decided to hack the system. He went to a small square where people gathered for a few minutes, smiling at each other, sharing a loaf of bread or an apple, without much conversation. He approached an elderly woman who was distributing cups of herbal tea. "Hello, can I talk to you?" She looked at him and smiled gently. "We welcome strangers as long as they don't wake anyone. I just want to understand, how long have you been sleeping so long? More than 100 years. And why? Because in the past, we drank too much." She She left him without explaining and went back to her home. All the answers were riddles wrapped in soft words. But Iyad wasn't alone anymore. Lama decided to help him. That night, Lama led him to an old building on the edge of town. It was different from the rest of the houses. Its walls were black, its windows were blocked, and its door bore a circular sign with an ancient word engraved above it. Arshvon, she told him. This is the Archive of Dreams, the place no one dares to visit. No one in the city talks about it because it's linked to the day they decided to sleep forever. Why? Because what happened here almost destroyed them. She opened the door, and before them appeared a long, dark corridor with wires and dim points of light hanging from the ceiling. The two of them began to enter together into the deepest part of the city. Before closing the door behind him, Iyad looked at Lama and asked, "Are you sure I need to know the truth?" She smiled and said, "In this city, whoever wakes up never goes back to the way they were." Iyad and Lama entered the old building, and the iron door closed tightly behind them, as if it hadn't been opened for decades. It was dark, but Lama lit a small oil lamp from the shelf and said, "This place was built before the long sleep began. It was a dream laboratory." Iyad walked behind her, and the walls around them were covered with strange drawings. Open eyes, human masks, and sleeping bodies connected by wires. A laboratory? What were they doing here? He asked. They were trying to control dreams, to live in them with full awareness, she said quietly. They thought dreams might be an alternate reality, clearer, freer. Lama led him into a large hall filled with wooden crates and shelves of dusty records. Iyad opened one of the records, titled Experiment Number 11, Implanting Consciousness in a Shared Dream. He read in a trembling voice, 50 volunteers were gathered and connected to a collective dreaming device. The goal, to enter a shared dream where the collective mind remains awake during the dream. Then his hand froze as he read in the margin, the volunteers never woke up. The dream became their home. Over time, Iyad learned the truth. This city was once a center for advanced research into consciousness and dreaming. Scientists and entire families joined a massive experiment to create an alternate dream reality where people could experience their dreams as they were awake. But the experiment spiraled out of control. Instead of waking up, the participants fell into a prolonged slumber, the disaster. Their dreams began to overlap, forming a single reality within their minds, a reality they didn't want to end. Over time, this dream was passed down to the next generation. Sleep became the norm, and wakefulness was merely a physical maintenance hour. Lama told Iyad, "This is why we sleep for 23 hours. We live there, where there's no pain, no death, no loss." Is that what you choose? Escape forever? Escape? Peace. But some of us began to see the cracks in the dream, and we began to wake up. Iyad began to understand. This whole city has been stuck in a collective dream for a century, unaware that it is no longer dreaming, but rather trapping itself in a warm lie. In the following days, Iyad began to notice other awake people like Lama. He met a young man named Yusef, who had been secretly waking up for 7 years, observing the city from the rooftop of his house, recording what he saw. He met a woman named Abir, who memorized the faces of dreamers and drew them day by day. They called themselves the Awakened. Yusef told him, "The dream is starting to erode. Some people feel pain in their sleep, and that's impossible. Some wake up crying and don't know why." Iyad suggested something crazy. What if we could sever the connection to the dream, separate the collective mind from consciousness? Lama was shocked by the idea, but she said, "At the heart of the city, in a room they call the core, there is the first device that started the experiment. No one has touched it for decades. It's said to be linked to everyone's minds." The next night, Iyad, Lama, Yusuf, and Abir entered the core, a fortified underground room accessible only by a code kept in an archive. The room was like a time capsule. In the center was a giant device resembling a metal tree with the tubes and wires sprouting from it. Iyad said as he approached, "This is the heart of the sleeping city." He opened the device's cover, revealing a master switch labeled "Disconnect equals full awakening equals danger of dream collapse." Yusef said, "If we do it, we might all wake up, but we don't know who we will be after awakening." Abir said quietly, "Everything in this city is a dream. Wouldn't it be wonderful to finally know who we are when we wake up?" Iyad looked at Lama. She said, "I'm ready. Let's try." And Iyad pressed the button. At first, nothing happened. But within minutes, screams began to rise from the houses. Men emerged from their homes, panting. Children cried. Women screamed, "Where are we? What is this?" As if their souls had been suddenly ripped from the dream. The entire city trembled. Some collapsed, some fled, some remained silent. Unable to believe that 5 o'clock was no longer the time to go back to sleep. On the horizon, the sun began to rise. In a city that hadn't seen a sunrise in a century, Iyad looked at the people and said, "The dream was beautiful, but it wasn't real." Weeks passed. People began to adjust. It was as if they had stepped out of a dark room into the light. New professions emerged. Talk and dialogue, argumentation, writing, even love returned. Lama became a teacher, teaching children the difference between dreams and reality. Yusef established a small museum that preserves the archives of the city as it had been. As for Iyad, he left the city. In his final speech, he said, "I came to the city of sleepers seeking sleep without nightmares, and I found endless wakefulness.